All right, awesome. So yes, hi, I am Tobias Brevik, or Toby Brevik, and today I'm going to be talking about a questionnaire that I developed to help me in class. I'm sort of early in my career as teaching. I'm a PhD student, and so I sort of started developing these questionnaires to get actionable feedback and to try to improve the experience of my students. So let's jump into that. So to start with, some of the questions that I ask. So one of these is, how do you plan to improve your understanding of the material? In addition to this, I also ask, what is confusing you, and what question do you have? And this sort of gets students to metacognate, think about how they're thinking, and to think about how they can sort of help themselves. Another question I ask is, what is causing you negative emotions? And I also ask, what is causing you positive emotions? The main reason of this is to give students more of an open platform to tell me things, right? I'm going to come back to these in a second. The other questions I ask are what I can do to improve their experience, and more broadly, what can be done to the course to improve the experience of it. Mostly, I'm going to be talking about these negative and positive emotions questions and some results that I found. So you've noticed that these questions are open-ended. So why do I use open-ended questions? To explain this, I'm going to tell you what I tell my students in a second. Here's an example of why we might want to use an open-ended question. So this is a question that gets asked at the end of Florida State's student evaluations of teaching at the end of the semester. And it asks students to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how the instructor's communication is. And the thing is, this does give us some information, especially if we can see if we're improving across semesters and things like that. But the thing is, we communicate with our students in a lot of ways, right? And so getting open-ended feedback gives students a platform to tell us if it's emails, if it's Canvas or Blackboard, if it's one-on-one in office hours, or if it's our lectures, and sort of what specifically we need to change. Are we using filler words too much? Are we a little too casual? Are we a little too formal? Things like that, right? And so using open-ended questions can give us a lot more richer information than we can necessarily get in these end of semester evaluations. So as I said, I talk about negative and positive emotions, or I ask them about these. So why do I do this? Now I'll tell you what I tell my students in my syllabus. So we're going to gain practice with goal setting, evaluation of your own progress, introspection, and understanding of how your emotions and other aspects of being human interact with your academic and professional endeavors, and how to harness your humanness to reach your academic and professional goals. I first do this to just acknowledge that we are emotional beings, and that our emotions are necessary in all of the things we do. So this acknowledges this. This also gives students a way to think about their experience and to think about, well, what am I enjoying? Maybe I can lean into that enjoyment. What am I not enjoying? What can I do to improve that? And so it gives students a way and encourages them to think about their experience and think about how they're thinking. The other thing I do or say is that it gives me regular feedback on what parts of the material are confusing and what I might be able to do differently to help with clarity. And this is really what I'm going to focus on today. So you might be asking, well, in these questionnaires, how many students are responding? So these are graded, so you would think that participation is more. And what I have found is that it's a lot more for me. So my end of semester evaluations tend to be about a 50% participation rate. But when I did my questionnaires, which I also call journals, when I give these to students, I had a 98% participation rate, which means that if I have a class of 50, there's only one student that I am not hearing from. And for me, this is a very, very sizable improvement. But so you might be asking, okay, students are doing these, but are they giving information that's useful? So first, let me define what I mean by actionable feedback. So I define it as actionable if it either explicitly or implicitly provides a suggestion for at least one component of the course or teacher behavior that the teacher has the reasonable ability to modify or retain. So an example of something that might be explicitly actionable is something like, I think we should have fewer quizzes, or I think we should have more time on quizzes. And something that might be implicit is someone might say, I think there are too many quizzes. These sort of say the same thing, but one is explicit and one implicitly communicates the same suggestion, but not directly. Examples of non-actionable feedback might be something like, I don't like that the course is online. Well, I can't do anything about that, right? Or it might be something like, I am fine with everything. Well, that doesn't tell me anything particularly useful either. But so, thinking about this definition of actionable feedback, how much actionable feedback am I getting? I'm getting quite a bit. So I gave questionnaires 4 times in this semester, and I had between a 60% and 75% rate of number of students. This is a percentage of students giving me feedback that I can do something with, that I can at least consider doing something with. And that's already big. And then if you do this across the whole semester, at the end of semester evaluations, we're hearing from every student, we're hearing from them once, right? If we compare it to that, I'm getting actionable feedback from 94% of my students. And this includes students who didn't even participate. That's huge. That's really big, right? Because, when we do these end of semester evaluations and we are getting comments, we have these open-ended comments that they can do. Participation is really low on that, but I'm getting rich feedback from a lot of students and across the entire semester. So you might be wondering, well, how students feel about this. This is something that I want to do future work to dig into. But for one student, I had a student say that something that causes them positive emotions is the journals or the questionnaires. And I had another student say that the idea of this journal assignment gives me positive emotions because it makes me feel like I can talk directly to the professor, just like a regular class in person, and express how I feel honestly about how things are going. So, this is just sort of anecdotal evidence right now, but basically I get the sense that my students feel like I'm approachable, and this gives them a way to talk to me even in an online course. And then you might be wondering, well, they're perceiving it well, but are issues getting resolved from their perspective, or do they maybe just like the fact that they can communicate, right? And what I found is that I had some students communicate to me that they felt like the changes that needed to be made were made. So I had, Tobias has already done everything possible. I'm satisfied with the course. And as we reached the end of the course, everything that could have been done to improve the course was done. So I do think it's important that when you get actionable feedback, that you do decide what to do with it and you communicate what you are going to do and how you made those decisions. And if students can see that you are actually using this feedback, I think that that's really important. So my suggestions for sort of application of this is, for one, we're all sort of aware that there are biases in student evaluations of teaching. And I think that it is important that we recognize that there are probably going to be biases in these as well. So we ourselves need to be aware of biases that our students might have. And we also might want to tell students about biases they might be inclined to have so that we can help mitigate that a little bit. We can also do things like identifying extreme answers using methods like sentiment analysis. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but basically you can get a measure of how positive or negative a response is and isolate what you look at that way. And then I also wanted to say that I don't think this is just useful to teachers. I think that this can be used by educators broadly. So it's success coaching, academic advising, retention. We can, before we meet with our students, get more information about their experience that can help us move that conversation more efficiently. And we can also get feedback for us as other educators on our own interactions with students and help us improve as well. So that's what I have. Here's my contact information again, and thanks for having me.